The Cecil Hotel has a reputation darker than its hallways. From unexplained deaths to vanishing guests, it's one of the most haunted places in America. But behind the headlines and viral clips lies something much more disturbing. Tonight, we go deeper. This is the story they never told you of what really went down at the Cecil Hotel. It started with a dream. Not mine, at least, I don't think so. I'd never been to Los Angeles before, never walked its cracked sidewalks or felt the city's strange energy humming like low static beneath the palm trees. But the dream came every night for a week. Same details, same strange pacing. Always the flickering neon sign, Cecil Hotel, buzzing dimly above me. A soft pink glow bleeding into the smoggy sky, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. The front doors always slid open slowly, like the hotel was breathing me in. I was inside before I knew it. The lobby stretched wider than seemed possible. Faded marble, peeling gilded edges, chandeliers hanging like cobwebs. And then came the voice, not one I recognized, not even distinctly human, but low, rattling like a whisper inside a drainpipe. "You're late," it would say. Then I'd wake up. Every night. Same dream. No ending. No explanation. Just a heavy sense of dread that clung to me like humidity. I told my roommate about it after the third night. Claire, ever the skeptic, just shrugged and said I needed to stop watching true crime documentaries before bed. She had a point. I was deep in the rabbit hole of YouTube videos, especially those covering unsolved cases. But it wasn't just a dream. I could feel it in my chest, this pull, like I was being summoned. So I booked a flight. I didn't tell Claire or anyone else. I just packed a duffel bag and flew to LA, thinking maybe I'd stay for a few days, visit the Cecil, take a few photos, satisfy whatever weird psychological itch had burrowed its way into my head. At the very least, I thought I'd get a story out of it. But standing in front of the real hotel, after the Uber dropped me off at the corner of Main Street, I realized something was off. It looked exactly like the dream. Same dim glow, same cracked sidewalk, even the same crooked, no vacancy, sign hanging by a single screw. It wasn't like seeing something familiar. It was like deja vu that hurt. Like someone had carved this image into my brain with a dull knife. I hesitated at the door. It was dirty, streaked with handprints and God knows what else. Inside, a single light flickered overhead. The front desk was unmanned. The air smelled like mildew and copper. I stepped inside anyway. That feeling again. Like being inhaled. The door hissed shut behind me. No wind, no draft. It just closed. I looked around the lobby, heart thudding in my ears. It was like walking into a corpse. Faded grandeur draped in decay. A crumbling staircase curved along the far wall, disappearing into shadow. Elevators with brass doors stood shut, their call buttons unlit. Dust floated in the air like snow. I stood at the front desk for a while before I heard the bell ring. Not because I touched it. Because someone else did. I turned around and saw no one. Just the lobby. Silent. Watching. Then a voice. "You checking in?" I flinched. A man in a maroon uniform appeared behind the desk like he'd always been there. His name tag read Gerald. His eyes were glassy, like he wasn't really seeing me. "Yeah, just one night," I said, unsure why I was even speaking. He didn't ask for ID or payment. Just handed me a rusted key, an actual key, not a card, with a tarnished tag that read room 504. 5th floor. Same as the dream. The elevator groaned as it opened. Inside, a cracked mirror stared back at me, and I caught my reflection shifting just a little too slowly. Like my body was here, but my soul was lagging behind. The ride up felt longer than 5 floors should take. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into a hallway soaked in shadow. Faint yellow light buzzed from a single overhead fixture, casting long, twitching shadows on the torn carpet. The walls were stained, and the air smelled faintly of rot. Room 504 was at the end of the hall. The key stuck in the lock. I had to jiggle it hard before the door creaked open. The room inside was ordinary. Dull brown wallpaper, a single bed, faded red comforter, a dusty nightstand, and a small bathroom. The window was sealed shut with layers of old paint. Still, it felt like someone had just left. The sheets were warm. The sink was dripping. I dropped my bag and sat on the edge of the bed, not sure what I was supposed to feel. That's when the knocking started. Soft. 3 times. Then silence. I got up and opened the door. The hallway was empty. I stood there for a moment, listening. Then I saw it, just for a second, something moving at the far end of the hall. Too fast to see clearly, too quiet to hear. But it was there, watching. I shut the door quickly and locked it. Then I heard the faucet in the bathroom turn on by itself. The water poured hard, splashing against porcelain. I walked in slowly, hand trembling as I reached for the knob. The mirror above the sink was fogged over. When I wiped it clean, I saw something scrawled behind me on the wall. Not written. Carved. "You're still late." I turned. Nothing was there. That night, I couldn't sleep. The walls creaked with movement that wasn't mine. Footsteps echoed above me even though the floor above was supposed to be empty. I kept hearing voices behind the wall, soft, urgent, whispering words I couldn't quite catch. But the one phrase that kept surfacing, again and again, was, "Room for one more." At 3:07 a.m., the TV turned on by itself. Static filled the screen. Then, just for a moment, the picture sharpened. It was me, standing in the hallway. Only it wasn't now. I was wearing different clothes. And behind me, something black and tall crept along the ceiling, inches above my head. Then the screen went black. I packed my bag and tried to leave. The hallway was darker than before. Every light had gone out. The elevator wouldn't come. The staircase seemed to stretch forever, spiraling down into deeper, colder levels I don't remember seeing on the blueprints. By the time I reached the lobby, the desk was empty again. I tried to push the doors open, but they wouldn't budge. It was like they were welded shut. And then Gerald appeared again, behind the desk, staring at me with blank eyes. "Sir," he said, "checkout is not until you're ready to forget." I backed away. "I want to leave." "Everyone does," he said, voice hollow. "But the hotel remembers. And now so do you." I ran back to the room. Only, it wasn't 504 anymore. The number was gone. Just a black smear where the plaque used to be. And when I opened the door, the room inside had changed. Everything was soaked in water. The floor sagged under my weight. The bed was gone. The walls dripped with something thick and dark. And on the far side of the room, the bathroom light flickered on. Something moved inside. I don't know why I stepped in. Maybe I wanted answers. Maybe I was sleepwalking through a dream I couldn't wake up from. Maybe the hotel had already claimed me. The sink was running again. And in the mirror, my reflection was gone. But someone else was standing there. Wet, pale, eyes wide and leaking water. She smiled and said my name. I didn't scream. I should have. But when you're so far beyond what your brain considers reality, fear gets quiet. It just hums in the back of your skull, like an old fridge. That's what I felt when she spoke my name. Not terror, not confusion, just a sick, cold understanding. Like I'd been waiting for her my entire life. She didn't move from the mirror. Her body, if that's what it was, seemed fused to the glass. Skin slick with stagnant water, fingers splayed like spider legs against the reflective surface. Her smile didn't belong on a human face. It was too wide, too symmetrical, like someone designed it. I stepped back. Her eyes followed me. No whites. Just a film of translucent gray that pulsed like jellyfish. I stumbled from the bathroom, half expecting the room to go back to normal, like the nightmare would end when I looked away, but it didn't. The ceiling still sagged with moisture. Mold bloomed along the seams of the wallpaper, writhing like it was alive. The window, once painted shut, was now gone. In its place was just concrete, as if the hotel had closed itself off from the world outside. I tried the door. It opened this time, but the hallway wasn't the same. The carpet was missing. The floor beneath was warped wood, blackened by water damage and something darker I couldn't identify. The overhead lights buzzed violently, swinging as if something had just brushed past them. But the worst part? The hallway didn't end. No turns. No elevators. No exit. Just more hallway. Like it had been stretched, pulled long and narrow, like a grotesque corridor in a fever dream. And at the far end, barely visible in the pulsing yellow light, was a silhouette. Standing still, facing me, not moving. I stepped back into the room and shut the door, heart hammering in my ears. Then the phone rang. A dusty rotary model on the nightstand, beige with yellowed buttons. It hadn't been there before. The ringing was shrill, too loud for the room, like it was coming from inside my skull. I stared at it until the fourth ring. Then I picked up. No one spoke at first, just static. Then a voice, soft, like someone speaking from the bottom of a drained pool. "She's waiting for you in the water." Click. The line went dead. I set the phone down and backed into the far corner of the room. That's when I noticed the walls were breathing. Not metaphorically. I mean the plaster bulged and deflated rhythmically, like a chest inhaling. It made a low groaning noise with each cycle, like the building was alive and in pain. And somewhere beneath all of it, I could hear her voice again. The girl from the mirror, whispering my name. Not saying it, chanting it, like a ritual. The room tilted slightly, as if gravity had been compromised. I fell to my knees, the floor suddenly slick and cold, like standing in a shallow lake. My fingers touched the wood, and I pulled them back soaked with water. No, not just water. It was thick, viscous, almost alive. The light bulb above me popped. Shards rained down, but never touched me. They hung in the air, suspended like stars frozen mid-fall. Then came the knock again. Same as before. 3 times. But louder. Closer. I stood up and slowly opened the door. The hallway was gone. In its place, a stairwell. Old, narrow, spiraling down into darkness that looked impossibly deep. A flickering light bulb dangled overhead, swaying gently even though there was no breeze. I didn't want to go down there, but my legs moved on their own. Each step creaked beneath my weight. The walls grew colder the deeper I went. The air thickened, felt like breathing through a wet towel. I couldn't see the bottom. I just kept going. Eventually, the steps turned to concrete. The walls began to sweat. I heard dripping in the dark. Something scurried behind me once, too fast to see, too quiet to follow. At last, I reached a door. No label. Just rusted steel swollen with moisture. I opened it. Inside was a boiler room. Enormous pipes wound along the ceiling like veins, hissing and trembling with heat. Water pooled along the floor. The walls were covered in strange carvings. Symbols, faces, eyes with no pupils. Some of them were fresh. I could still see the dampness in the gouges. In the center of the room stood a figure. Not the girl. Something taller. It didn't move. Just stood with its back to me, head tilted to the side like it was listening to something I couldn't hear. Its limbs were too long. Its spine arched unnaturally. Skin black and slick like oil. And around its feet, the water rippled inward, like it was pulling the liquid toward itself. I turned to leave, and the door slammed shut behind me. No lock. No handle. I was trapped. The thing turned its head slowly, bone cracking with each motion. And when I saw its face, it didn't have one. Just a gaping, toothless mouth, stretched wide and quivering. No nose, no eyes. Just that endless maw, pulsing with breath. It opened its arms and whispered, "Come see." I backed away, slipping in the water, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the voice anymore. But then something else happened. The pipes above burst open. Scalding steam hissed into the air, blinding me. I covered my face and crawled blindly, searching for a way out. I felt my hand brush against a hatch in the wall, square, metal, half submerged. I yanked it open and fell inside. Everything went black. When I came to, I was somewhere else. Another hallway, but cleaner, fresher, like a different part of the hotel entirely. The lights worked. The carpet was intact. Music played softly overhead, something jazzy, like from the 1940s. There was a smell of lavender and old paper. And at the end of the hall, a door, wooden, ornate, the number carved into the brass plate, 714. Not my room. Not any room I'd seen before. But from the moment I looked at it, I knew it was waiting for me. I took a step forward, then another. Behind me, I heard a soft splash, like something wet had just entered the hallway. Then another. Closer. Closer. I reached the door, placed my hand on the knob, and just before I turned it, I heard a whisper from right behind my ear. "You're getting closer." I turned around slowly. There was nothing behind me. The hallway stretched empty in both directions. The air was still, the music gone. The only sound was my own breath, shallow, sharp, the kind of breathing you do when you're trying not to be noticed. I pressed my back to the door of room 714, heart pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my teeth. "You're getting closer." That voice. It hadn't echoed. It had been in the air beside me, soft as silk, cold as ice. And I recognized it. Not from the hotel. From the dreams. The voice that always greeted me in the lobby, in that first flicker of the recurring nightmare, "You're late." Same tone. Same speaker. Same presence. I turned the knob. The door opened with no resistance. Room 714 wasn't a hotel room. It was a library. Massive. Bookshelves lined every wall from floor to ceiling, far taller than any floor of the Cecil should allow. The walls arched up into darkness, the books growing older and darker the higher they went. Candles burned in glass sconces, though I never saw anyone light them. The air was still but dense, thick with dust and the smell of ink and something bitter, like rotting wood. I stepped in. The door shut silently behind me. My footfalls didn't echo. The carpet beneath me was red and velvet soft, muffling every step. I moved between the shelves, looking at the spines of the books. There were no titles, just symbols, shapes. Some glowed faintly when I brushed my fingers against them. Others grew warm or cold. A low humming started behind the walls, like thousands of voices murmuring in harmony. The books weren't written in English, or any language I recognized. I opened one at random, and the letters shifted on the page, squirming like maggots. The words seemed to bleed across the paper, seeping into my skin just from being near them. One book pulsed when I touched it. Dark leather, black stitching along the spine. A strange sigil etched into the front cover, an eye crossed out, surrounded by 4 crooked triangles. As soon as my fingers made contact, the room changed. The walls shuddered, the humming stopped, and the shelves turned. Not visibly, but suddenly, all the books around me were different. No more symbols, no more blank spines, just titles, all of them with my name. I pulled one off the shelf. It was dated with today's date. I opened it. Inside, the first page was a description of me entering the hotel. My full name, birth date, details I hadn't told anyone. Exact wording from the front desk, the dream, the mirror, everything. Even the thoughts I hadn't spoken aloud. The next page continued the story, in real time. I read the sentence. He opens the book and turns the page with shaking hands. I froze, then turned the page. He realizes there's no escape, that the Cecil isn't a place. It's a record, a prison built from memory and nightmare, and now it remembers him too. I dropped the book. The shelves trembled. Something moved between the aisles. Heavy, wet, breathing deep and slow. I ran. The library stretched on for miles. No corners, no exits. Just rows and rows of those books, my name written again and again, each one a different date, a different hour. Some in the future, some with pages torn out, some still warm, as if just printed. I skidded around a bend and slammed into something soft but solid. It was a man, middle-aged, thin, pale, dressed like he hadn't changed his clothes in years. His eyes were sunken, skin paper thin. He blinked at me like someone waking from a coma. "You're real," he whispered. "Who are you?" I gasped. I was the janitor here. Years ago. Before they turned it into this. Turned what into what? He grabbed my shoulders with desperate strength. This place, it feeds on memory. On attention. You didn't come here by accident. You were invited. It called you. That dream you had? It wasn't yours. It was its. That's how it spreads. I stared at him, unsure if he was mad or the only sane person I'd seen since I arrived. "I've been trapped here since 1989, he said. "Every time someone remembers this place, talks about it, looks up a YouTube video or podcast or story, the hotel grows. It adds a new wing, a new corridor, a new victim." He pointed to the book I dropped. "Those are your pages now. Once they're filled, you don't leave. You just become part of the story." I shook my head. No, I can't be part of this. I just came to see it, and now it sees you." He let go of me. "You still have time. Not much. But you might be able to escape if you find the elevator that goes down. Not the one you came in on. The other one. It only appears when the lights flicker in reverse." I opened my mouth to ask what that meant, but he was gone. Just vanished. I was alone in the aisle again. Then the candles blew out. The shelves groaned. And a distant scream echoed through the space. Not human, not animal. A noise like metal scraping bone, like teeth grinding together underwater. The library trembled. I ran again. And there it was. In the distance. An elevator door. Brass, pristine, shining with light that shouldn't have existed in this decaying place. The call button flickered red, then blue, then red again. I sprinted for it. Behind me, the shelves collapsed, raining books and wood and whispers. Something chased me through the dust and smoke. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I reached the elevator, slammed the button. The doors opened. Inside was a mirror, and in the reflection, I wasn't alone. She stood behind me again, the girl, eyes black now, mouth sewn shut, fingers twitching as if itching to claw. I stepped inside. The doors closed. The lights above flashed once, twice, then began to flicker backward. A strange strobe effect, rewinding itself like tape in reverse. The elevator lurched and began to descend. The elevator sank deeper than the hotel should have allowed. No floor indicators, no music, just silence and that sickening feeling in my stomach, the kind that tells you you've passed the point of no return. The only light came from the mirrored walls, and even those seemed to darken with every floor we passed. My own reflection blurred around the edges, like something was wearing my skin but didn't know how to move in it properly. She stood behind me still, the girl. Her sewn mouth quivered, the stitches straining as if she were trying to speak. But whatever was holding her there, whatever bound her reflection to mine, wasn't finished with her yet. Then the elevator stopped, not with a ding or a gentle jolt. It shuddered, like it hit something that wasn't supposed to be there. The doors opened slowly, scraping against metal, as if they hadn't been used in decades. Darkness stretched ahead. No walls, no ceiling. Just a concrete path leading forward, swallowed by black fog. A sign hung over the elevator door as I stepped out. I only saw it for a second, but it's burned into my mind. Storage, lost guests, and found regrets. The moment I stepped off, the doors closed behind me and vanished. Literally. No outline. No seams. Just a smooth, unbroken wall where the elevator had been. I had no choice but to walk forward. My footsteps echoed in strange, delayed ways. Sometimes they came back instantly. Other times I heard them a full 2 seconds after I stepped. The path was damp, slick, and the further I walked, the colder the air became, not like winter cold, but deep cold, old cold, like the kind found at the bottom of sealed tombs. Shapes began to appear in the fog. First, outlines of luggage, old suitcases, handbags, trunks, scattered across the path. Some split open, spilling clothes I didn't recognize, long dresses, blood-stained coats, tiny baby shoes tied together with a red ribbon. I stopped at one bag, torn at the seams, filled not with clothing but with teeth. Human teeth. Thousands of them. I stumbled away, heart pounding. Then I saw the walls forming on either side of the path. They hadn't been there before. But now, tall shelves lined the corridor, floor to ceiling, each holding strange, personal items. Dolls with their eyes removed. Photographs with faces scratched out. Phones that blinked, even though they weren't plugged into anything. And on every shelf, a nameplate. Names. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Some scratched through. Others smeared with something black. I reached up and touched one. My name was on it. Freshly carved. Still warm. Next to it was a single item. My old school ID from 8th grade. I hadn't seen it in years. The plastic was cracked in the exact same spot where I dropped it back in middle school. But this wasn't a replica. It was mine. I kept walking. I had to. The shelves stretched on forever, but the air was changing. It pulsed with the sensation of being watched, not from behind, not above, but inside. Like the hotel itself had slipped under my skin. I turned a corner and entered a massive chamber. Towering shelves spiraled upward like a cathedral of loss. In the center was a desk. Behind it sat the girl. But now, her mouth was no longer sewn shut. The stitches hung loosely from her lips like unraveling thread. Her mouth was stained with something dark, as if she'd been screaming into the void for centuries. Her eyes, those black, leaking voids, watched me calmly. She spoke. "You're almost ready?" I didn't respond. "What is this place?" I asked finally, my voice cracking. "This is where the hotel keeps its promises." She rose to her feet, every movement fluid like water, bones creaking like warped wood. "You were chosen long before you arrived. It needed a new archivist, a new memory keeper. Someone curious, someone lost. I didn't come here for this," I whispered. "No one ever does." She walked to the shelves and ran a hand along the spines of books similar to the ones I'd seen earlier. But these had no names, only dates. Some were from centuries ago. Some hadn't happened yet. "This is the deep library," she said softly, "where forgotten souls are cataloged." I turned back toward the way I came. There was no exit, just more fog, more shelves. "I want to leave." "You can," she said, "but first you must do something for me." Her head tilted unnaturally, cracking as it turned too far. "Find his room." I didn't ask who she meant. I already knew. The faceless thing. The one in the boiler room. The one that had whispered, "Come see." "He was once like you," she said. "A guest. But he forgot his story. And now he haunts the margins. If you want to leave, you must remember his ending." "How?" "Follow the water." I blinked, and she was gone. In her place, another path. Narrow, dripping, lined with pipes that pulsed with cold moisture. I stepped forward, against every instinct in my body. The pipes led deeper. And then I began to hear it again. The voice. Soft, liquid, calling from the dark. "You're late." And this time, it wasn't just one voice. It was hundreds. The deeper I went, the louder the voices grew. Not screaming, not pleading, but murmuring. Urgent. Layered. 1,000 mouths reciting the same sentence at different tempos. "You're late. You're late. You're late." Some were childlike. Some were dry and brittle, like sand scraping metal. Others sounded like they were bubbling through water, gurgling beneath the words. The hallway narrowed, and the pipes swelled outward like swollen veins. The moisture turned to steady dripping. Every few steps, I passed a puddle, some reflecting my face clearly, others warping it into strangers I didn't recognize. Eventually, I reached a hatch in the floor. There was no handle, just rusted metal carved with the same symbol from the book in the library. Crossed out, I was surrounded by 4 crooked triangles. The steel beneath my hands throbbed slightly, like a living thing. When I pressed against it, it swung open with a gasp of fetid air that nearly knocked me back. Below was water. Dark, still, and far too deep to measure. A metal ladder led down into it. The rungs disappeared into the black surface without disturbing it. No ripples. No sound. Just perfect, unnatural stillness. I hesitated, but I remembered what the girl had said, follow the water. So I climbed down. The first rung was slick. The second was cold. By the third, the air smelled like rot and static, like wet electronics and something decaying. My foot touched the surface of the water, and it gave way, not like a normal liquid. It parted with a hiss, like breath escaping a lung. And then I sank. Not fell. Sank. Effortless. Silent. Like I was being pulled through smoke instead of liquid. Below the surface, everything changed. The light above vanished, swallowed immediately. I opened my eyes, somehow able to see, and what I saw wasn't water. It was memory. Images drifted around me, suspended like dust in sunlight. A girl running down a hallway with blood on her shoes. A man shaving in a broken mirror, while something watched from behind the glass. A maid opening the wrong door and never coming out again. Every frame flickered, incomplete, half-formed moments trapped in an eternal loop. This wasn't just water. It was the hotel's mind. It remembered everything. I swam, if you could call it that, through the dark, guided only by instinct and the occasional flicker of movement. Time stopped making sense. Sometimes it felt like I'd been down there for minutes. Other times, hours. I'd passed staircases that led nowhere. Rooms floating in the dark, their doors ajar, beds swaying slowly as if rocking on invisible tides. And then I saw him, the faceless thing. He was hunched beside an open door at the bottom of a submerged hallway. His limbs were even longer than before, knees bent backwards, arms slack like rope. The absence of a face had somehow deepened, a black, gnashing spiral where a head should have been. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the door. He didn't move, didn't acknowledge me. I crept closer. The door led into a room. Simple, familiar. Room 504. My room? Except it wasn't mine. It was his. A journal floated inside, pages splayed open, turning slowly in the stillness. On the wall above the bed, scratched deep into the plaster, were words barely legible. I remember too much. I entered the room, ignoring the thing beside the door. As I reached for the journal, a sudden crack echoed through the water. Not like a sound, but a fracture. The water around me shuddered, and light poured from the journal's pages like smoke. I opened it. Inside were drawings, not words. Hundreds of them. Faces without eyes. Elevators with no floors. Staircases wrapped around screaming mouths. Each sketch more desperate, more chaotic. As the pages turned, they changed. Became more specific. Personal. My apartment. My face. Claire. Then the girl. The last page was blank, except for a single line scratched deep into the paper. Finish the story or become it. The journal dissolved in my hands. Behind me, I heard movement. Slow. Wet. Heavy. The faceless thing had entered the room. But something was different now. He wasn't looking at me. He was reaching. One long, trembling hand touched the wall where the words were scratched. I remember too much. And in the silence that followed, he whispered, not from his mouth, but from everywhere. You're the last one. The water buckled. Everything pulled upward. I was yanked through the depths like a fish on a hook, spinning through images and screams and flickering lights. The hallway. The lobby. The mirror. The book. Claire's face, wide-eyed and shouting something I couldn't hear. And then I woke up. In room 504. On the bed. Drenched in sweat. The light was off. The TV was on. Static again. I sat up. The carpet was dry. The window was sealed. Everything was normal. Almost. On the nightstand was the journal. The one from the water. Only now it was closed. Clean. Dry. I picked it up. Inside, all the pages were blank. Except the first. It read, "You made it back. But not for long." A knock at the door. 3 times. I stood slowly. Opened it. The hallway stretched on. Empty. But on the floor, in front of my door, was a package. Wrapped in old brown paper, tied with a red ribbon. No label. I picked it up and brought it inside. Unwrapped it. Inside was a tape recorder and a cassette labeled only, "Play me." My hand hovered over the play button. Something inside me screamed to stop, to run, to throw the thing out the window. But I pressed it anyway. The tape clicked. Word. And then a voice, familiar, low, wet, echoing from the edges of the void. Welcome to the Cecil Hotel. We've been waiting for you. So now you know some of what really went down at the Cecil Hotel. But the truth? It never left the building. If you felt something watching you during this story, if a shadow moved where it shouldn't, maybe the Cecil hasn't finished with you either. Don't go just yet. If this tale chilled your bones, leave a comment below with the last hotel you remember staying at. And if you want to check in for more disturbing stories like this, subscribe, like, and whatever you do, don't answer the knock after midnight.